Hello and welcome into the SunDevilSource Postgame Show following ASU's 74-70 loss against TCU. I'm Jacob Brooks alongside Chris Cartman. And Chris, the Sun Devils are now under 500 for the first time this season. A 12-13 overall record, a 3-11 record in Big 12 play in its inaugural season in the Big 12. And Chris, this game kind of felt like the same old story as the rest of the season. ASU gets it close late, but they aren't able to capitalize. ASU has a key player out with injury, Jaden Quaintance didn't play, and ASU loses control of their emotions and has someone ejected in Adam Miller. Kind of what did you see from that theme playing out again tonight?
Yeah, I thought ASU coming off of a really good performance against Texas Tech that was a loss didn't have as much energy about itself in the first half. The Adam Miller ejection seemed like a spark in the second half for a team that had struggled with its interior defense and its ability to make shots and keep TCU from scoring high percentage baskets. ASU came back from down as much as 13, tied the game, had a chance to win late, missed front end of a 1-and-1, had turnovers. Amir Ali missed an easy shot in the paint behind us, and other issues. The Bashir Jihad stepping out of bounds and turning the ball over in a critical situation. The execution is just not what it needs to be in endgame situations for ASU in a super competitive, very good conference. And then, of course, very alarmingly, there have been this string of disciplinary issues that have been going on that I think has taken center stage in Bobby Hurley's press conference and in the conversations that we're having about this team.
Absolutely, Chris. Adam Miller, one of the supposed calm veteran leaders for ASU, always receives praise from his teammates for his leadership qualities, has now been ejected twice in conference play. Bobby Hurley said that he heard Miller say some things he shouldn't be saying to the referees. Just losing his cool like that seems like almost a tumbleweed building up and up of frustrations for ASU this season. Just kind of, what do you make of the team morale and the vibes moving forward in this season?
Look, they've had a really bad run here. It started kind of with the BJ Freeman incident with the headbutting against Arizona on February 1st against Caleb Love. You then had Adam Miller slap a Kansas State player and get ejected and then suspended for the subsequent game. Then you had BJ Freeman miss a game due to a disciplinary decision by Bobby Hurley. And then what happened tonight with Adam Miller, these are their senior guards. They're some of their better players on the team, the ones that they need to get the most leadership from. Hurley said that they've had conversations about this and how officiating is going to be watching them pretty closely for these sorts of things. And they haven't been able to get out of their own way. It's a mounting frustration that BJ Freeman really sort of candidly acknowledged has been problematic as they have gone through this recent sort of downturn. My feeling really, though, is like you can't do that. You can't do any of those things despite the way that you feel when you know that the result that's going to have on your team, which is already playing shorthanded, no Jaden Quaintance, a lot of times only in a 7-man rotation. You take Adam Miller out of the equation, now you're down to like 6 guys, and that's not conducive to success.
So, Chris, you talked about that snowball buildup of those emotions and how it's coming out more and more frequently as this losing streak continues. We're a decade into the Bobby Hurley era. How much blame of that snowballing effect of emotions do you think falls on his shoulders, and what do you make of his future as ASU's head coach?
It's a good question. That's what everybody's thinking about right now who's an ASU fan. As I've said, we've had more negative feedback in the replies of our social media posts and on the message board about Bobby Hurley's tenure now than at any given point in time. You have a lot of frustration, and there have been some really bad luck injuries and things that have hampered this team in Big 12 play. They've rarely had everybody available to them, and that's a major factor. But one thing I've said for years is that Bobby Hurley's emotional disposition, he wears his emotions on his sleeve, that projects onto his players in a way that I think has negative repercussions. It's not really a surprise that because he's always going at officials, that his players sometimes get a little bit too far afoul with the officials, as what happened tonight. And so I just think that you have to look at where all of this sort of stems from, and then you have to address it. Is Bobby Hurley in jeopardy? I think he should be in jeopardy at this point. They've lost 10 out of 12 games. They've lost 6 straight home games. It's his 10th season. Yeah, there's been some bad luck with injuries, but absent some really surprising late run here over the last few weeks of the season, it's going to be a disappointing year, and that has been the recent trend line of ASU basketball.
And you touched on, obviously, the injuries. The big one right now, star freshman Jaden Quaintance continued to be sidelined today, did not play against TCU because of his ankle injury. Bobby Hurley was kind of touchy, a little bit vague on Quaintance's timeline, didn't give an answer on if Sun Devil fans could potentially see him back in action against number 6 ranked Houston in a big matchup this Tuesday. How much of a difference do you think Jaden Quaintance would make if he was able to play in that game? Because BJ Freeman said post-game that he thinks the Sun Devils would have won both of their last 2 games that they lost if Quaintance was playing.
Yeah, it's a reasonable argument to be made. We saw JT Toppin have 41 points for Texas Tech and 7 offensive rebounds, I believe. That's a huge difference in that game, probably the difference. And then today, TCU definitely got the better of ASU for most of the night, especially in the first half in the paint. Points inside. Sean Phillips had a good second half. Had block shots, some good rebounds, but not enough throughout a whole 40 minutes against TCU to win that interior battle, which is so determinative unless you have a great shooting team, which ASU really is not. It's an average shooting team. And then, of course, ASU being limited to 7 or 8 guys in a lot of these games, you have too many minutes that are being played by some of their key players, given the injuries and other issues that they've had. And those are major factors in what have contributed to this really bad stretch for ASU.
So you touch on the 7 to 8 man rotation and the recent bad stretch for ASU. With those in mind, what chance do you give the Sun Devils at potentially making the NCAA tournament in March?
Slim and vanishing would be the chances. I think today, this game was one that ASU needed to win, because TCU probably the worst team that ASU is going to play the remainder of its regular season. Maybe Utah. There's one more game, I think, against Utah that is a comparable opponent. But they got to play Houston on Tuesday. It's a top 5 team in the country. And then they have really difficult games in the last week to 2 weeks of the regular season. They're going to have to win like almost all of these games to climb back into the conversation. And you just can't say, given 6 losses at home, losses in 10 out of 12, and some of the things that have been stymieing this team, that anything like that is remotely expected. It's not impossible, but the chances are very low.
Well, that's all for this edition of the SunDevilSource Postgame Show. From DFA, I'm Jacob Brooks and Chris Cartman. If you want to stay up to date with all of our ASU men's basketball coverage, be sure to check out SunDevilSource.com and all of our SunDevilSource socials. And we hope you all have a good rest of your night.